I mean, anytime Angel's been on the other side of the court, I think I've had about 30.
Angel's annoying as hell to play against, so it's great that she's on this side. We've obviously had our fair share.
So I text Angel, and I was like, I ain't gonna lie, last year, I love playing against Chicago because I had my best games.
The market has officially spoken, and the verdict is absolutely devastating. For the past 2 years, we have been force-fed a narrative. We have been told repeatedly and loudly that the explosion of interest in women's basketball was a shared phenomenon. We were told there was a dual engine driving this massive cultural shift. Angel Reese stood in front of microphones and boldly declared that she would look back in 20 years and know that she was the reason people were watching. She refused to even say Caitlin Clark's name, insisting that the rising tide was because of her, too. It was a bold claim. It was a confident claim. And as of yesterday, the multi-billion-dollar television conglomerates of the world collectively looked at that claim, laughed, and permanently shut it down. What just happened with the WNBA broadcasting schedule is not just a scheduling announcement. It is an undeniable, mathematically proven reality check. It is the complete dismantling of a manufactured rivalry, laid bare by the most ruthless truth-teller on the planet, corporate spreadsheets. You can manipulate a narrative on social media, you can rally a fan base on Twitter, but you cannot trick Disney, NBC, Amazon Prime, and CBS into giving you airtime that you do not deserve. These are not charitable organizations. They are billion-dollar machines that deal exclusively in return on investment. And when they pooled their data, analyzed the viewership, and looked at the actual value of every single player in the league, they made a historic, unprecedented decision. For the first time in the history of the Women's National Basketball Association, every single regular season game for one franchise will be broadcast on national television. All 44 games, not 40, not 41, 44. Every time Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever step onto a basketball court in 2026, the entire country will have a front row seat. Think about the gravity of that commitment. We are talking about ABC, ESPN, Amazon Prime, NBC Peacock, USA Network, ION, CBS, and Paramount+. This is a coalition of virtually every major media empire in the United States agreeing simultaneously that Indiana Fever basketball is the absolute apex of the sport, the golden goose, the undisputed cash cow. They are not writing these massive checks out of the goodness of their hearts or league loyalty. They are doing it because Caitlin Clark single-handedly warped the demographic data of sports viewership. Before she arrived, the Fever were a forgotten franchise, playing in a quiet building, struggling to find relevance. The second she walked through the door, she brought the money, the private planes, the sold-out arenas, and this kind of television ratings that genuinely terrified competing NBA broadcasts. And then, we look at the rest of the league. If Caitlin Clark is the rising tide, who is actually floating and who is sinking under the weight of their own ego? The broadcasting schedule reads like a brutally honest report card, and Angel Reese is holding a failing grade. After parading around as the self-proclaimed face of the league, Reese and her new team, the Atlanta Dream, were awarded a grand total of 28 nationally televised games. 28. That puts them in 7th place across the league. Let that sink in. The player who demanded credit for the league's success is sitting behind 6 other franchises in the eyes of the television executives. Let us look at who is actually ahead of her, because the disrespect is profound, yet entirely justified by the market. The Dallas Wings secured 36 national games. 36 games built entirely around Paige Bueckers and the number 1 overall pick, Azzi Fudd. The networks looked at 2 players who have literally never played a single second of professional basketball together and decided that their potential chemistry was fundamentally more valuable and bankable than Angel Reese's actual presence. They are betting millions of dollars on a hypothetical duo over the self-anointed queen of the court. The New York Liberty Super Team got 35 games. The defending champion Las Vegas Aces, led by the actual best player on the planet, A'ja Wilson, got 33. Even the Los Angeles Sparks, a franchise that has been wandering in the wilderness of irrelevance for years, secured 31 games. Angel Reese is sitting at 28. looking up at a roster of rookies, rebuilding projects, and actual champions. That is a 16-game deficit compared to Caitlin Clark. That is nearly a third of the entire regular season, where networks have actively decided they would rather air literally anything else than an Atlanta Dream game. But the sheer embarrassment of the game count is only the beginning of the nightmare. Now, let us talk about the actual product on the screen, because television is a visual medium and atmosphere is currency. When the Indiana Fever play a home game, they play in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It is an NBA arena that holds over 17,000 screaming, paying fans. When you turn on your television to watch Caitlin Clark, the broadcast looks like a premium top-tier sporting event. The camera angles are sweeping and cinematic. The roar of the crowd hits the broadcast microphones and shakes the speakers in your living room. The energy translates through the screen. Advertisers are not just paying for the eyeballs, they are paying to have their brands associated with that electric, sold-out atmosphere. It feels important because it looks important. Now picture the Atlanta Dream. The Atlanta Dream play their home games in the Gateway Center Arena in College Park, Georgia. It is a building that holds roughly 3,500 people. 3,500. There are high school football stadiums in Texas that hold triple that capacity on a random Friday night in October. The Gateway Center is essentially a glorified recreational gym. And the networks know this. When a game is broadcast from a half-empty, tiny venue, it looks minor league. The camera angles are uncomfortably tight. The crowd noise is a scattered murmur. The entire aesthetic of the broadcast feels cheap. And because of that, the commercial inventory around that game is worth drastically less. You cannot charge premium advertising rates for a product that visually resembles a scrimmage. Don't worry. There was this mythical concept floated around last year by certain media personalities called the Angel Reese effect. The delusion was so strong that people genuinely suggested the Atlanta Dream would have to relocate their home games to State Farm Arena, where the NBA's Atlanta Hawks play, just to accommodate the massive, overwhelming demand to see Angel Reese play in person. It was an outright fabrication. Even when Reese was playing in Chicago, a massive sports market, she could not even manage to sell out the Wintrust Arena, a building that only holds 9,000 people. How many games did the Chicago Sky move to the United Center, the house that Michael Jordan built, to satisfy the rabid fan demand to see Angel Reese grab rebounds? The answer is exactly zero. The demand never existed outside of the internet echo chamber. The market test has been run, the results are in, and the networks have priced her exactly where she belongs, playing in a minor league gym on a secondary broadcast schedule. To truly understand how this spectacular fall from grace happened, we have to forensically examine what actually transpired during her 2 miserable years in Chicago. You do not just get shipped out of a major market unless things are fundamentally broken. In year 1 with the Chicago Sky, the team finished with a dismal record of 13 wins and 27 losses. In year 2, somehow, it got even worse. The team plummeted to 10 wins and 34 losses. That is not a temporary slump. That is a complete organizational freefall. But if you only looked at the individual box scores, you might be confused. Reese was putting up historic rebounding numbers. She was a walking double-double. She was making all-star teams. On paper, it looked like a franchise cornerstone doing exactly what a cornerstone should do, but basketball is not played on a spreadsheet. When you actually watch the tape, a dark reality emerges about how those numbers were manufactured. A massive percentage of her offensive rebounds were generated off her own missed shots directly at the rim. She would catch the ball in the post, force up an off-balance, wild layup, miss it terribly, grab her own rebound because she was already under the basket, miss the putback, grab it again, and maybe finally score. In the box score, that looks like 2 offensive rebounds and 2 points. In reality, it is gross inefficiency masquerading as hustle. It is stat padding in its purest, most detrimental form. Now, true hustle is creating second chances for your team. What she was doing was creating a chaotic, broken offense that actively hurt her team's chances of winning. Her field goal percentage around the rim was staggeringly low for a professional post player. She had no touch, no finesse, just a sheer, brutal persistence that resulted in personal accolades while her team burned to the ground, winning less than a quarter of their games. And the toxicity was not just confined to the hardwood, It bled heavily into the locker room. By the 2025 season, the friction within the Chicago Sky was public knowledge. This was not just typical teammate bickering. This involved highly respected, legendary veterans of the league like Courtney Vandersloot. Reports surfaced of Reese publicly and pointedly questioning veterans, creating an atmosphere of sheer disrespect. The situation deteriorated so completely that Reese was handed a suspension for conduct detrimental to the team. Let us be very clear about what that means. Professional sports franchises will tolerate almost anything if a player is helping them win. For a team to officially suspend their supposed star player, the behavior has to cross a line so egregious, so disruptive, that the front office is willing to publicly humiliate themselves just to get that player out of the building for a few days. When the trade to Atlanta finally materialized, the reaction out of Chicago was deafening in its silence. There were no tearful goodbye videos from teammates. There were no heartfelt messages from the front office thanking her for her service. Instead, the organization moved with breathtaking speed to erase her footprint. They immediately handed her number 5 jersey to incoming rookie Rickea Jackson before the ink on the trade paperwork was even dry. You do not do that to a beloved franchise icon. You do that when you are slamming the door shut on a toxic era. You do that when an organization is collectively exhaling in relief that the circus has finally left town. The most damning piece of evidence, however, is what happened to the Chicago Sky the second she was gone. For 2 years, the narrative around the league was that Chicago was a radioactive destination. Free agents allegedly wanted nothing to do with the city or the franchise. But the moment Angel Reese was shipped to Georgia, the floodgates opened. Suddenly, superstar Skylar Diggins-Smith signed a contract. Azura Stevens came on board. Dijonay Carrington joined the roster. Overnight, Chicago went from a basketball wasteland to a premier destination for top-tier talent. The only variable that changed was the removal of Angel Reese from that locker room. Nobody wanted to play with that energy. Nobody wanted to be a part of that manufactured drama. Compare that scorched earth reality to what is happening in Indiana. Caitlin Clark walked into a losing franchise and instantly elevated everyone around her. Aaliyah Boston went from a struggling big to an unstoppable force in the paint because Clark's gravity pulled double teams away. Kelsey Mitchell started having the best shooting seasons of her life because Clark was feeding her perfectly timed passes in transition. Lexi Hull became an elite defensive specialist. There are 0 reports of locker room friction in Indiana. There are 0 conduct suspensions. There are only sold-out arenas, shattered television records, and a team that is genuinely terrifying to play against. Indiana is a masterclass in team basketball and superstar leadership. Chicago was a masterclass in ego. And that brings us to the most incredibly awkward, historically disastrous introductory press conference in the history of professional sports. When a team trades for a supposed superstar, the introductory presser is supposed to be a coronation. It is a carefully orchestrated PR event designed to sell tickets, hype up the fan base, and show a united, smiling front to the media. The Atlanta Dream set up the microphones, turned on the cameras, and invited their core veterans to welcome Angel Reese to the city. What followed was a brutal, unfiltered roasting session that accidentally revealed exactly how the rest of the WNBA views her. A reporter asked a seemingly harmless question to the veteran sitting at the table. How would you describe what it was like playing against Angel the last 2 years? Ryan Howard, one of the elite scorers in the league, did not even blink. She leaned into the microphone and casually dropped a bomb. She said, anytime Angel's been on the other side of the court, I think I've had about 30 points. She said it with a straight face. No hesitation, no attempt to soften the blow. And the worst part? She wasn't bragging. She was just stating a matter-of-fact reality. Reese's defensive reputation around the league is non-existent. She is a turnstile. And Howard, sitting 3 feet away from her new teammate, basically told the entire national media that playing against Angel Reese was an automatic, effortless 30-point night. Every opposing coach watching that clip just wrote down their game plan for the season. Run your best scorer directly at Reese and watch the scoreboard light up. But it didn't stop there. Naz Hillman took her turn at the microphone. Her contribution to the welcome wagon was looking dead at the cameras and calling Reese annoying as hell. Now you can try to spin that in a sports context. You can try to pretend she meant annoying like a pesky defender, But when you pair it with the locker room cancer rumors from Chicago and the suspension, the phrase annoying as hell takes on a very literal, very personal meaning. It is the phrase you use for someone who completely exhausts you, someone who drains the energy out of the room. Then, Alicia Gray delivered the final fatal blow. Gray is a phenomenal offensive talent. She leaned into the mic and said with a slight smirk, "I ain't gonna lie, last year I loved playing against Chicago because I had my best games." When an elite scorer tells you that playing against your specific defense brought out their absolute best performance, they are not paying you a compliment. They are telling you that you are barbecue chicken. They are telling you that when they saw your team on the schedule, they circled it in red ink because they knew it was going to be a stat padding clinic. Put all of that together in a span of 2 minutes at an event designed exclusively to praise her. Angel Reese's new teammates told the world that she cannot defend a parked car, that she is personally irritating to be around, and that opposing teams view her defensively as a joke. These are not random internet trolls. These are the women who have stared her down on the court for 2 years and now have to share a locker room with her. The absolute lack of respect is staggering. The Atlanta Dream players basically confessed that they used to treat the Chicago Sky like a practice squad. They were cooking on the court. They were doing whatever they wanted, at will, because there was no resistance. This is the ultimate irony of Angel Reese's career trajectory. She spent 2 entire years being the loudest voice in the room, demanding respect, pointing to her manufactured rebounds, starting friction with veterans, and insisting she was the co-author of the WNBA's explosive growth. She talked her way out of Chicago, thinking a new city would validate her ego. Instead, she walked blindly into a locker room where the established veterans immediately put her on blast on day one. She has to live with the reality that her own teammates view her as a defensive liability and an annoyance. And more importantly, she has to live with the fact that the invisible hand of the television market has weighed her value and found it completely lacking. Every single network executive, every single sponsor, every single billionaire broadcast partner looked at the 2026 WNBA landscape. They looked at the empty 3,500-seat high school gym in Atlanta. They looked at the horrific shooting percentages, the toxic locker room history, and the defensive turnstile tape. And then they looked at Caitlin Clark packing NBA arenas, dropping 30-foot bombs, elevating her teammates, and pulling in millions of viewers who had never watched women's basketball in their lives. The decision wasn't just easy, it was automatic. 44 games for the true superstar, 28 games for the loud Mirage. The debate is over. The rivalry never actually existed. The numbers don't lie, the networks don't care about feelings, and the entire basketball world just watched reality come crashing down on the biggest hoax in the sport.